Pros and cons of using AI in mediation with Colm Brannigan. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is attorney Mac Pierre-Louis, lawyer, mediator, arbitrator. I work throughout Florida and Texas.
And I'm Tom Giglione. Nice to see you, Mac. I'd like to introduce Colm Brannigan, a co-patriot here in Canada, and discussing pros and cons of using AI in mediation.
Yes. Nice to meet you, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm a mediator and arbitrator and MEDAR, but my real interest is in how we can use technology. And, we've now moved into an ODR world, and I think we're moving into an AI world, and I want to be moving with it. But that's why I'm quite happy to be here and to talk to both of you about what is a fascinating topic.
Awesome. And thank you so much. Of course, Thomas, you're always great at bringing people on, and we appreciate that. And this wouldn't really work without all the different individuals that who you know and who are glad to share their knowledge. And by the way, I'm going to share my screen to show your website. That is mediate.ca, Mediate Canada, of course. Just so in case people want to check you out and they can learn more about you, they can visit you on there. And of course, it wouldn't be remiss if I didn't get Thomas. We agree mediate.com, correct, Thomas?
Mediators.com. Mediators. We agree mediators.com.
We agree mediators.com.
Yeah.
And Thomas, you're launching this is a new site for you,
Yes.
in addition to the other projects you've done. And so people can definitely check this out and learn more. Lots of it coming soon. So yeah, just wanted to make sure people knew how to get in touch with you guys on your sites. If you're listening to this on Spotify or anywhere else, be sure to check out the YouTube video. All right. So let's go at it, guys. Pros and cons of using AI in mediation. Everyone's talking about this now, right? And so we definitely want to hear, Colm, what are some thoughts you have on pros and cons?
Well, I'll start by saying I think the pros outweigh the cons at this stage. And I think the pros can be, summarized very easily. The pros are we now have a tool that can enhance our practices in terms of providing, in many ways, what would have been clerical or virtual assistance, but controlling it ourselves. It also can help us with marketing to a very high degree. And I think once people realize that and realize that they have to personalize their marketing, can't just use it and for everybody be saying the same thing. And the one area that I'm most interested in is the use of AI in training mediators, because there's many people want to enter mediation to make a living. And although they can easily find training, it's very difficult to make the jump between training and actual work. And if that takes time, that means your skills are perhaps not as good as they should be. But you can use ChatGPT or Bard or any of the other platforms out there to actually run mediation simulations. And to me, that's an enormous benefit that almost dwarfs all the other ones that are there at the moment.
Yeah, Thomas, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, just to mention that I believe I met Colm over about 20 years ago. I would say Colm is one of the pioneers in Canada, and we were part of an organization trying to promote mediation at the time. At that time, it was not really accepted in the legal community in Canada. Now that mediation is integrated, we have mediation. We got MedArb. We're talking 20 years later about AI, which is we are again pioneers in this area, so to speak. And I feel that there is a bit of a lag with the mainstream mediation community, trying to understand and grapple with how to practically use this new technology in their practice. And hopefully today's podcast could shed some light in that area to help mediators understand that this is something that could really be a benefit to their mediation practice to make their practice more efficient. I would, a lot of people view the technology almost like the internet or a search engine, but it's they will look at it as a software, but it's actually much more revolutionary than that. I'm in awe actually every day on what the capabilities are, and we'll touch a little bit about the practical aspects with discussions with Colm today. Um, Colm, let us know what you're up to and how you're using AI in your practice.
Okay, so I mean, AI has been around quite a while, and we've all been using it, whether we are aware of it or not. We have devices in our home to do things, the Internet of Things, and we rely on Google or an equivalent. GPS seems to have gone. We all do this on maps, and we do it sometimes to the extent of driving off the road because it says doesn't tell you there's a lake there or there's roads on it that aren't there. So we got to be very careful here that we don't over rely on technology, particularly now at the time that we're really developing it. In my practice, I'm using ChatGPT 4 to help me with preparation and research. Now, as a mediator, you don't have to be a subject matter expert. That's up to the lawyers who advise their clients about if it's a legal dispute. But it helps to know a wee bit about the area you're working in. So I use it for that. I have taken many of my precedent documents, agreements, and I've run it through ChatGPT for a number of things. One is to simplify some of them. So you can ask it much as you can with Grammarly or other programs. You can move it. Hemingway will let you do it as well. You can ask it to tell you what level your writing's at, and maybe move it down one or two notches if you're using, particularly if you're using it with self-represented parties. So I've kind of tweaked many of my agreements because I have different kinds of agreements, and they all were ballooning. As something happened, you would add, and so what was a couple of pages becomes pages. And so by running them through AI, I can tweak them and bring them back down to their basics. I can also use it and do use it in research, but I'll throw in a caution there. One of the things we're struggling with at the moment is what is being, a nice term for is hallucinations. Really, it's the machine going nuts, and it's problematic if you're doing research. I put out not a bibliography, but a reading list on MedArb, which is a process the or Institute of Canada a couple of years ago put out rules, which are unusual, and then we're seeing it used a fair amount. And I prompted it to add articles, and it did. I said, "Give me 20 more articles," and it did. Unfortunately, 12 of those didn't exist, even though they had name authors, they had great sounding titles, and they had references. So that's something to be aware of. I'm also
Well,
using it with
that's a con, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's you look at it and people, as Tom pointed out, this is not a search engine. What this is a conversation. And much like a conversation between humans, it depends on what you say, what the response is. And so we have to watch that. But for years, I've had, an online calendar, but now I'm incorporating it into a more AI driven to help simplify setting up mediations, arbitrations, all those. You can use it with your administrative documents. And we're seeing ADR practice software, as we talked about, particularly, I think, ADR notable, Gary Dornhofer's, which integrates and is now moving towards having AI in it as well. Another area that I have been using it a fair amount in is in presentations. I speak fairly frequently about online dispute resolution and MedArb and hopefully now AI. Um, and so I use it to help me put together for example, presentation slide decks, or even in my marketing materials using Canva as the main program for doing that. And then there's a relatively new one called Tome, Tome, that produces fantastic slides. Now you have to work on them. It's not a good idea to delegate everything to a system that we really don't know what's going on in. So we
Yeah.
kind of have to watch that. But that's where I'm using it now. And that where I'm really focusing is in learning how to prompt it properly.
Yeah, thank you for Tome. I didn't know that this one exists. And you can't keep up, right? It's
No,
just so many changes that are happening every day. So you learn something new.
yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, Tome puts out great content. I mean, you have to play with it, but it's great and design slides. And if you're like someone like me who is fine with words but not so great with visuals, then it's a really really great addition. So essentially, that's what I'm doing. I'm incorporating it into my training as well. Now, I haven't run a training yet, but I will in the new year, which will incorporate it into it. You can use it as I'm sure you do, Tom, to design role plays because that's a fundamental part of training. And yet we see the same role plays circulated over and over again. So being able to
Yes.
tweak them is
Hmm.
just great. As long as we remember that we're not dealing with a sentient being, despite what the headlines might say,
Yeah.
we're dealing with a machine that uses loads of data and looks at patterns, which is why it seems so human like. But that's something we have to watch very carefully. So the pro is get out there and get stuff on it. The con is make sure you check it out.
Yeah. Go ahead, Thomas.
Yes. To follow up with that, the technology is getting better and better. I don't know, this idea about hallucinations with ChatGPT, for some of the listeners out there might not understand that part, but it's basically, uh, you could you could create like a paradigm for ChatGPT to see how creative it could be or how accurate it could be. So it's basically, what you input really affects what your output is. And now, we're in December 2023 and coming up December 2023. And in just this past few weeks, there's a big shakeup with ChatGPT. And the CEO was kicked out, now reinstated. But the new CEO was talking just the other day on a podcast that I was watching, and he was basically saying they're focusing on reducing those hallucinations because the language model that they're using is predicting the next word. And now what they're doing is focusing on predicting on the outcome, so to speak. And they're also focusing on coding. So basically, to have ChatGPT to check that the codes are working for people that are coding languages, various, Python and such, to have more focus on the outcome, to have less hallucinations for the outcome. So it's developing, and there's new information out there that says that it's becoming more and more accurate. And I would say it will be much more accurate within a year. So we can trust it more as a tool to help mediators and lawyers in our practices.
Yes. Uh, Go ahead, Colm.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big difference between how this will help lawyers and how this will help mediators. I mean, lawyers have a massive data source and case reports, which can be put into AI and used for predictive analysis. It's very difficult to get data on ADR, and I mean, Tom
Mm.
and I were talking about that, and some U.S. states have it, but generally speaking, you can't get it. So most of what we talk about is anecdotal. So it's going to be hard to do predictive analysis in mediation or even arbitration with it for a while anyway, till the database comes together. And that's been, I think, a holdup for mediation developing is the fact that we know it works. We know it works well. We know it helps people, but we can't show it in data. I mean, even in mindfulness, people can show it to companies. Here's if you have a mindfulness program, this is what it'll do based on the past. We can't do that. So we're moving into, greater use of technology in a field that doesn't have some of the underpinnings of of large language models, or even as we move towards the scary general artificial general intelligence, which is where or it takes over and we're done. We just don't have a lot of data, so it's an opportunity for us to actually produce data. It's an opportunity for us to work on how we practice, and document review is really important. A colleague told me that she had put a document that had 50,000 words in it through an AI, and it took 5 minutes for it to analyze it. Right, something that, wow, now you have to check, but
Mhm.
they're going to become more accurate as they are trained on more specific data. So an AI model for law based on law data will be a lot more accurate than going out to ChatGPT 4. And
Yeah.
ChatGPT 5, which will come out soon, I think, will be another quantum leap forward. You can see that in the amount of data that's gone into it. But that data is not specific. And that data includes all the nonsense and all the awful stuff that's out on the internet. So
Yeah.
very
So,
careful.
gentlemen, I got a question. Before we started recording, we were chatting about. I think Thomas, you made the comment about the. It was like the internet, right? The age of the internet came upon us, and that changed things. And then, Colm, you mentioned that during COVID, we had to use Zoom and had to use ODR to get work done. We had no choice. But now we're in this new place where it's not the same kind of thing, where we're living with most people doing the traditional thing, or at least ODR, and some people tinkering with and playing with AI and trying to see what's in it for them and what can they get out of it. So, what do you guys think will happen when it comes to people, I guess, having a need to just accept to use this? Like, do you think there's going to be a catalyst, like a COVID kind of catalyst that prompts us to get on board on the AI train? Because I can't see anything right now on the horizon other than that feeling of being left behind and not making money because other mediators are using the tool and they're successful. But what do you guys think? Um, or are we just going to be in this limbo, forever, where people kind of, use it and don't use it and play with it, but don't take it too seriously?
I'd like to comment on that. What's happening now, and it's going to be a developing trend. People are going to be using AI and not aware that they're using it. X, which former Twitter, is introducing AI into their program. Microsoft, has a huge control of ChatGPT. They're going to be integrating all their software with AI. So I would say not in a year, but in the next several months, uh, people are going to be using Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, whatever, and we're going to have AI integrated without us not really being aware of it. It's all, like it's all of a sudden, oh, this is helping me, or this has helped me, and this is going to slowly crawl into the programming language where it's going to be so integrated we're not even aware that we're using it. So uh, that's what's happening right now. We're on the cusp of having AI infiltrating all software, where nothing's going to be left behind.
Yeah, I agree. I think we are, looking at it at the very beginning almost. Um, and it can be a catalyst. I think there are a couple of things that will drive it. The first one, as Tom mentioned, this is not a search engine. This is a conversation. And so the prompts, as people become better at prompts, they'll see greater opportunity. Plus, we're moving towards voice recognition, and that will make an enormous difference. We're in Star Trek territory there, and so we will see that push it forward. COVID did push everybody. I mean, Tom and I mean, have been offering ODR services for many, many years and very little take up. Then COVID happened, and the next day, Zoom became the best thing and the worst thing in the world, right? And it occurred to me then, and I think we're in a different place with AI. One of the problems with people jumping on Zoom was we're all so used to getting something out of a box and turning it on. I'm old enough that when I studied computer science, it was bigger than my house with the power of a calculator, and I still kind of go, "Ooh, that's neat." But I think if you're not used to growing up with settings and adjusting them, Zoom was just a huge, "Oh my God, what do we do?" Right? But there's something else driving it as well. So I don't think it's the same with AI because you don't have to worry about the settings. It's there. You're going to use it. So it's the prompt you have to worry about, and very, very carefully too. But I see it becoming incremental as people see others using it. I think we are spending a lot of time thinking about things like bias and tone of writing and neutrality of writing, particularly as arbitrators. And when people see the benefit of being able to run things through an AI that actually will help you with that, that will help. But there's another big difference from my perspective. My son is a mediator as well. He works with the Canadian Department of National Defense. He's very familiar with technology. And what we're seeing in Canada certainly, and I think in the US as well, is we're seeing people who are now looking at ADR, looking at mediation as their first career. For me, it was a second or third career, and the same with most of my peers. But as younger members come forward, they will push the use of technology in a way that perhaps we won't. I mean, I happen to be interested in it, so I will. But I know when I speak about it, and particularly when I was doing stuff about ODR, the room would divide in terms of age, and I would be on the wrong side of my age group in terms that I would be on the idea of, oh yeah, we should use it. So I think you combine demographics, ease of use, easy to use, and more functionality. I think we will see it being used. It'll be driven by market. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And when people start talking, as I'm sure Tom and I will in the future, about how this is going to really help your practice, people are going to listen and we'll try it because we uh, our practices are quite different than law practices, and so we can use this in much different ways. But we have to be careful. We have to be careful with everything. I mean, security. Um, you know, being very, very careful that if you are running something through it, you don't put names in it, because unless you opt out, and which you can in ChatGPT, unless you opt out, your everything you do, your data goes into the training base, and you don't want names. Confidentiality is an issue.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah, that
although
could be a whole nother conversation by itself. What does the future hold for confidentiality? In because that's a sacrosanct, in what we do.
it is, and we had the same issue with Zoom. One day
Yeah,
Zoom was great, next day Zoom was terrible, and we flip
correct.
flopped over it.
Zoom
Um,
bombing.
Yeah, well, I was giving a talk on Zoom, and then we were Zoom bombed as I was talking about security because it hadn't been closed down. It was actually brilliant. It really demonstrated the point, but I didn't set it up. But confidentiality is going to be a huge issue. And I think also we have to look at one of the key tenets of mediation, which is informed consent. So I think we're going to have to make sure our clients are okay with us using AI, and we tell them we are. We can't just kind of use it under the table, particularly if we start bringing it into mediation sessions, and we're looking at developing scenarios and all that kind of stuff.
Mm,
I think that's another one. Confidentiality, we're going to have to develop standards, and we're seeing some of those. But with Zoom, the confidentiality aspect was in many ways a tempest in a teacup, because same people who are saying how awful it was were still sending unencrypted email with documents attached. So we're going to have to
thank
change
you.
our mind on
No,
that.
absolutely. No, 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 thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
It's like I'll have someone say, "Oh, I don't trust Google, and don't send me that file via Google Drive," but yet send it via an email. And I'm like, "You do realize that the Google Drive link is safer because it's a direct
Mhm.
connection to you, and only
Yes.
you have access to it, versus this email is gonna go bounce server to server to server to server to get to you." It doesn't make any sense, but hey, there we are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my comment to people on that is you may as well send a postcard. As like it's there.
Exactly. Yes.
So lots of change coming. You
Yeah.
know, flip back
Colm, I
to
have a
Tom to
question.
go some of them.
Colm, I have a question for
Sure.
you. I know you're very much involved with training in MedArb, and you're known as, you know, as an expert in various designing various role plays and such. Now that we have AI that can look in and 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 see you and see your background and make comments, could make comments on, in a mediation, for example, body language and all that. Do you see AI coming up as a co-mediator? Do you see AI coming up as maybe as part of a judicial process where it will be an arbitrator, a final arbitrator, or in arbitration you have, you know, one arbitrator or three? It could be the third arbitrator. Where do you see uh, AI as far as co-mediating disputes or being involved in MedArb or arbitration?
Well, what I definitely see as soon as we say that, we'll have a lot of mediators very upset. But if you look at, when we're looking at ODR and the concept of the fourth party, so really what you're saying is, will it become the third party? And
Mm-hmm.
I think it possibly will, but not for a long time. But where it will help us is perhaps developing options. We'd be able to prompt perhaps with the clients there, let's see what happens if. It will help us, I think, drafting documents. It will help us a lot of things. I don't think it's going to go to co-mediation yet. Is that possible? I mean, the specter of the robo mediator, the robo arbitrator, robo judge, that's a wee bit away.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, I think because you look at technology and you often forget there's inherent bias in it. And we've seen that in some of the software programs I'm using on sentencing, for example, where there's a bias against people of color. I mean, it's just so
Yes.
clear. And we're going to have similar issues because at the moment, AI might be a thing, whatever it is, but really it's just a program and a bunch of formulas. I mean, algorithm sounds much more technical, but it's really a formula. And we kind of say, oh well, it's a machine, it's impersonal. Well, it's not, because at the moment it's been programmed by people, and people have their own inherent biases, and they bring them into the programming, and that has to be worked out. Particularly if we use it in judicial system, and in arbitral. Will it be used for certain parts? For sure, but we have to spend a lot of time on it, and we have to also be really careful that as we advance and we see the machines essentially coding themselves, we have to be careful that we've got the bias out before we get to that, or else all we're going to do is reinforce bias. And to me, that's one of the biggest problems in our justice system anyway. And most of what I do is outside the justice system, so I can see using AI in a different way than I might if I was within, a government agency or judicial system. I think it just has really great potential, but I don't see it as a third party or even 3.5. I don't see it there yet. And funny, there's a very I'll just bore you for a sec. There's a very interesting article several years ago in ODR out of Israel. Very small samples, so you can't draw much from it. But it asked, would you prefer to have a robot kind of computer mediator or arbitrator? And I read it and I thought, well, arbitrator, I mean, mediations was the exact opposite. People wanted to have the mediator be the robot, for want of a better word, and the arbitrator be human. And I thought that was very interesting. So as long as we don't scare ourselves too much, and there is scary stuff out there, I'm not saying there isn't. I think we'll see a gradual use of it. But if we start talking about replacing anyone, which is some of the headlines, we have to be very careful, because I don't think we're going to replace everyone. I think we're going to enhance our practices if we use it right. And many of the human qualities of empathy, for example, it's going to be pretty hard to replicate that for a long, long time, at least long enough that I won't be worrying about it, I think. Although who knows? That's the nice thing about this, is we can say anything and we might be right and we're probably wrong, but we can't do anything better than that.
Yeah. Thomas, you want to close us out? Any more last
Yeah.
thoughts?
Thanks, Colm, for giving your perspective on AI. And how it's going to affect our practice. I think there's a lot that is going to develop. And especially now that it's being integrated into areas where we're not even aware where it's being integrated, in our in Facebook and Meta and X and such. I think it's something that we'd like to invite you back for another podcast to just maybe, who knows, there'd be a lot more developments over the next 2-3 months that we haven't even thought of. So thank you, Colm.
Well, thank you very much. It was interesting. I mean, I think it is a topic that we have to be careful about, but I think it has great potential. And I'm just looking at it in a very narrow sense in what we do as ADR practitioners. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, Tom and Mac. And yeah, maybe we will talk again sooner than we expect.
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
gentlemen. Well, the invitation is always open. All right, guys. Until next time, everyone, check out lmipodcast.com where all these videos are being featured, or just go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/at LMI podcast. Until next time, check us out. Take care. Bye bye.